planning to make a small series on how I use the ct.js-editor to make games. This editor uses HTML5 with JavaScript. You can render your game as a game to be played in a browser or as a desktop game, or you can render it for Android. It can be rendered for Windows, Linux and Macintosh. So it is quite useful for making games for users with different preferences. I have done a couple of videos earlier on this subject. Hopefully I have a couple of things to add to what I have done earlier. This is not because I am a great or even good programmer. I'm not. I will not even call myself a programmer at all. I sort of just find ways to make this work for me. Programming is a tool to tell a story. When it works, I'm happy. Could I do it in a neater way, a smarter way? Probably. But that is not what is most important to me. I am an old dog with a limited number of new things I have room left to learn. So, why am I doing this? 2 reasons. It might be helpful to someone like me, who have not gotten as far as me on this journey, and might find some of it useful. And secondly, it helps myself to get stuff organized in my head. One thing I find myself doing is inventing the wheel more than once, so maybe I can get better at reusing earlier solutions. The kind of games I like to do is point-and-click adventure games with puzzles in them. This covers a lot of different types of tasks to handle, including an inventory system, video cutscenes to make the game have a story that connects different gameplay scenes, a system to save progress, and a system for input-output. I have worked for a long time on one game that I have now released, which is one reason that I am working with an older version than the latest of the ct.js-editor. I don't want to change the version during an ongoing project, and I am not sure if later versions add stuff that are useful to me. I will have a look at that later. For now, I will start simple with how I do start every new game. This start is a response to how browsers will handle HTML5 games with JavaScript. To prevent that certain automatic functions will start without the user's permission, browsers today will demand that you click on the application or have another interaction with the application before certain functions start to run. This applies to playing sound. The first thing that happens will typically be for a load screen to play while necessary assets are loaded before the game can start. ct.js has a load scene that comes with the package. You can customize that to some degree, or even replace it with your own load scene. Now, ct.js provides an editor for free, so I think the least I can do is to let them advertise through the load scene. So I let that be as it is from the box, so to speak. So the first thing I would add would generally be a start page with different options, like to start a new game, start a previously saved game, read instructions on how to play the game, and other stuff as might be useful. I typically want this page to have background music playing, but in a browser that will not happen until the player clicks on the application. The natural reason for a player to click on the application at the Start menu is to make a choice, like to start a new game, which will move the player to a different room. So the background music of the Start menu will, for many players, never start before the game moves to a different room. To get the Start page to start up with background music playing, I add a room before the Start menu, with the sole purpose of having the player click on the application to get to the Start page, where the background music now will be playing right from the start. So this page has the function to get the Start menu start up with background music without the need to click on the Start Up menu. To make the click page, we need to create a room. For the room, we need a background image. I have this image that I use for making the click page for all my games. The dimension of my games are generally 640 by 480 pixels. That is a 4:3 ratio. The size might seem to be a bit on the small side, but it works for me. It also helps for people that are playing the game on a mobile phone. Not that that is something I encourage, but people do that anyway. So I need to load the image under the Textures tab, and I should check the box for use as a background. That is actually not a big thing. If you forget to check the box, you will, when you are adding the background to the room, be reminded. The editor will ask if you want to make the image a background image. So, we create a new room, we give it a name like Room Click, and we set the dimensions of the view, and we set the background image and set repeat to no repeat. For a room, we can catch different events and have codes performing different jobs. For this room, we need to catch if a mouse button is pressed and then move to the start room. I will also add a click sound to give the player a sound effect that supports that the mouse has been clicked. So we need to add an action for catching a mouse click. We set that up by going to Project and under Project to Actions and Input Methods. I name the action MB1 for mouse button 1 and choose the input method as pointer primary. For a regular mouse, that will be the left mouse button. If the mouse is set up for a left-handed player, with the buttons reversed, it will then naturally be the right mouse button, that is the primary input button. This input method will also cover touch on the touch screen. To have a click sound, I need to import a sound file under the Sounds tab. I name the sound SoundClick. So I can now go back to the room and add code to catch the mouse click, play the click sound and move to the next room. Events can be programmed for the start of the room. Loading assets for the room will typically be under that tab. To catch an input, frame start will be the natural place to do that. So we open the tab for frame start and add code for catching a mouse click. If CT actions MB1 pressed is true, the primary mouse button is pressed down. If so, CT sound spawn, sound click, will start to play the click sound, and CT rooms switch, room start. We'll close this room and open the room start. We need a room start with a background and a background music loop. It is a very similar process as for creating the room click room. For the background sound file, we should, in addition to what we did for the click sound, check the "This is a music track" box. There are some differences in how a sound file and a music file is handled by the program backstage, so to speak. It is not something that we have to worry about. For now, I will place the background sound as an event under the Room Start tab, and I will set the sound to be played as a loop. This is for testing if the program this far does what we want it to do. And when we try out the code, we find that yes, it does. When we click on the click room, the start room opens and the background music starts to play automatically in a loop. Well, this will be all for this time. Thank you for listening, and see you again.